Welcome to Femme and Furious, a podcast where pop culture meets a feminine framing. I am your host, Julia Rose Portella, and today we are taking a long bus ride to Dublin where we will hang out and get to know Johnny a little bit better. Yay! But before we dive into today's episode where we will finish our way through Binding 13, let me tell you how you can support and follow the podcast. You can, of course, follow and subscribe anywhere that you get your podcasts. Full video breakdowns are over on YouTube, cultural analysis on Substack. Okay, community and group chat vibes over on Patreon. Follow on Instagram and on TikTok at Femme and Furious Pod. And big announcement. If you like the spiritual stuff that we sometimes talk about on this podcast, whether we are talking about just the basics of astrology, or if you liked the Astrology of a Marian episode that I did with Penn Cole, then I have great and wonderful news for you. I have a podcast that is coming out on May 6th. It is called Third Eye View. It will be similar to this, how we dive into pop culture from the feminist and queer perspective, but it will be diving into pop culture from the spiritual perspective. Now, unlike this podcast, it won't always be new content. So typically we're talking about stuff that's coming out or that will be relevant coming up. That podcast will focus much more on spiritual themes and using specific pop culture properties to support it. So if you want a little bit of enlightenment with your entertainment, you can go over and listen to that podcast. I'll be talking about it on here. Nothing will change with Femme and Furious, but that podcast will be coming out. It's called Third Eye View. All right, let's dive into today's episode. We will be going through today's episode by theme and by event. So we're not going to break it down per chapter. I know that I've done that the entirety of this book, but to go this long of a stretch of chapters just felt like too much. We didn't need to dive into it in that capacity. So let me know if you like this type of structure more over on the Patreon. I'll throw a poll up when I post this over there, because I'd really like to know how you would like me to format these episodes so that they're more digestible and easy for you to understand and work through. So let's start with the fight scene with Bella in the cafeteria, because this is one of the moments where everything that has been simmering over the course of the book, especially with Johnny and Bella, finally comes to a rolling boil and spills over. It starts with Lizzie essentially drawing a line in the sand with her bestie Shannon. She's like, I'm not fucking around with Shannon here, which we need that. Shannon needs both types of friends considering where she's come from. She needs the soft, tender, nurturing, loving, golden energy that she gets from Claire. And she also needs this viper energy that she gets from Lizzie, where somebody is going to be aggressive in their advocacy for her. And so Lizzie basically tells Johnny that he needs to address the rumors that Bella is spreading about Shannon. And Johnny's response is swift. It is immediate. He goes straight into action mode. Like literally his brain turns off and goes into caveman experience. And he makes the executive decision that the solution to this is to bring Shannon over to Bella and force Bella to publicly denounce the rumors and publicly apologize to Shannon. And in his mind, he is protecting Shannon here. This is him stepping up and handling it. But Shannon is very clearly not on board with this. She tells him no multiple times. She tries to de-escalate the situation. She tries to shut it down. And Johnny, being Johnny, just moves forward anyway, doing his bulldozing thing. And that's really the crux of this entire scene. It's not really about Bella and Johnny. It's actually about the tension that Bella causes between Johnny and Shannon. Johnny is acting with good intentions, but he's also acting without consent. And he's making decisions for Shannon, not with her. And this is nothing new to us, right? Like he's been doing this the entire book, but there's something about this scene where it really gets amplified and explored in a way that's much deeper, because it's not just Johnny and Shannon dealing with the aftermath. In fact, Shannon leaves. She's like, fuck this. I didn't want this. And she leaves, and now Johnny has to actually cope with it in real time instead of their feelings for each other getting in the way of solving what is actually a crucial problem between the two of them, which is Johnny consistently overriding her desires and autonomy. Now, it literally takes the entire group to momentarily distract and redirect Johnny. It takes Gibbs, Huey, Lizzie, Claire, and Shannon all being like, yeah, let's just blow off today. Let's just like fuck off and go have some crack at Johnny's house. Like, crack being fun, okay? The Irish slang for fun, not crack as in like the drug. Even though they're trying to pull his attention somewhere, literally all of these people are all on the same page. This is not how they want Johnny to respond to this problem. It barely holds. Like, this is a house of cards of momentary direction that immediately blows over the second that Bella makes a comment when they're passing her. And because Johnny is who he is, and because Johnny has already made a commitment to fuck Cormac up if anything continues to happen with Bella, it escalates. It escalates to the point where Johnny hits Cormac in the middle of school. And there's definitely something a little bit more layered driving him here too. I mean, first and foremost, another thing that we've talked about the entirety of this book is the depth of Johnny's anger issues. But his reaction here isn't really about just defending Shannon. I think that's a huge part of it. But I think it's also tied up in his own guilt and shame about the relationship that he had with Bella. Now, that's how I read it. If you read it any differently, you can let me know. Send me an email to femandfuriouspod@gmail.com. Because if you think about it, at every opportunity, his friends are telling him that this was a mistake, particularly Gibbs. And for somebody like Johnny, who is so consistent and diligent in his choices, making a Bella-sized mistake is a huge deal, especially when he's on the brink of advancing his career. But regardless of his motivation, the impact is the same. And I love to talk about this when I talk about stories that have this tension in it. The discrepancy between intent and impact. It might be one of my favorite things to explore when it comes to story or when it comes to life in general, right? This is why we have phrases like the road to hell is paved with good intentions, because your intent can be good and the impact can be incredibly harmful. And for Johnny, every attempt he has made to intervene on Shannon's behalf has directly contradicted what it is that she's asking for. And ultimately, it makes the situation worse for her. Sometimes he's not aware of the harm that he's causing by putting her in these situations. But for example, offering to take her to Biddy's and to the cinema puts a target on her back with Bella because Bella's friend has now seen them at the movie theater. It puts her in harm's way at Biddy's, right? Because Sierra and the other bullies that she used to deal with were there. And then what he doesn't realize is that she then has to go home and physically pay a toll with her body because she is getting abused for missing her curfew or not being home or not doing her chores or whatever it is. So even though she gets this momentary high from being with him, the impact and the harm of the impact is so much more profound than Johnny even realizes. And of course, Johnny, being somewhat self-aware, is able to realize only after the fact that he directly went against her wishes. The idea of protecting her in any given moment or doing what he thinks is best for her in any given moment is more important to him than her autonomy. And this particular experience with Bella in the lunchroom, even though Shannon is consistently and diligently saying no, that she doesn't want this, he thinks that protecting her is more important than what she's actually saying to him. And even when he goes to get involved with Cormac, even when he gets pulled into this rabbit hole, Shannon steps in front of him and attempts to get him to back away again. And this isn't only what's best for her and what she desires, but it's what's best for him too. She understands the stake in a way that he, in the moment, in this like rush of caveman energy, refuses to see. but Johnny is so fixated on the idea of defending her that he completely overrides her. And this is when Shannon walks away. That's what she wants to do, so that's what she's going to do. She flees the situation. And, he hits Cormac and his friends pull him off and start pointing out the very real consequences of getting into a fight on school grounds. That he could lose his contract with the academy, that he could lose this path to his future, everything that he's worked for. And his response is essentially that he doesn't care because he was defending her. Meanwhile, we know that this is not the truth. We know that Johnny cares an insane amount about rugby. It's why he's pushing his body so hard to the brink of literal physical long-term damage because he's unwilling to give up the chance of going to the U20s because that's what he thinks that the path of his career is. And so for him to have this rage blackout where he decides that protecting her is more important than his academy or his future is just not correct. It's not healthy. It's where this disconnect really becomes quite obvious for a character like Johnny, because what he's doing doesn't actually align with what she needs or what he even wants long term. And Huey is the one who articulates this very clearly, pointing out that Johnny didn't help Shannon at all. If anything, he embarrassed her. And in doing so, he made her an even bigger target. He literally says, all you ended up doing was embarrassing the girl. Congratulations, Cap. She doesn't have enough shit to deal with. You single-handedly made her the target of every one of your little fangirls. And of course, this is exactly what Shannon was trying to avoid in the first place, especially because she has a long-running history with girls just like Bella who have bullied her in the past. And then Gibbsy reinforces it. Gibbsy doesn't shy away from telling Johnny a hard truth. So he says it again here, she didn't want you to defend her, lad. She told you that. And Johnny says, well, she was wrong. And that statement right there, well, she was wrong, is the thesis of the problem or the crux of the tension that we're getting at in this fight with Bella. Because what that reveals about Johnny in that moment is that he believes his judgment takes precedence over her autonomy, that he knows better than her. And that's the point where his protection stops being a shield for her and starts becoming controlling. I know we love Johnny. I would just like to point out that he's very flawed. He's an MMC that is very, very flawed. And he should be. All of these characters are dealing with copious amounts of trauma, right? Johnny included. But between his anger issues and his controlling behavior in this way, I think we have to draw the parallels between how a relationship like Johnny and Shannon are building, what they're building together, and how that can bridge into something that turns into Marie and Teddy. And I think the text is asking us to draw that bridge, right? Of course, all of this is happening within the context of Shannon's don't make a scene conditioning. She has literally been taught repeatedly that visibility is unsafe, that attention leads to consequences, which is why she locks herself in her room whenever she can to avoid the attention of her father, because she knows that that attention is unsafe. So when Johnny thinks that he's helping, he's actually forcing her into the exact kind of public exposure that she has been trying to avoid, and that she's been trying to avoid for good reason, because she has a long laundry list of experiences that have told her that being visible is unsafe. And Johnny, to a certain degree, knows this because he's read all 14 pages front and back of the incidents that happened when she was at BCS. I also think the scene subtly destabilizes the male savior dynamic, because typically in a male savior trope, the structure of that would be something like Johnny steps in and actually fixes everything. And this is something that he has promised to do for Shannon repeatedly, by the way. He has promised multiple times over the course of this book that he will be able to fix this problem for her. Just tell me where this problem is coming from and I'll be able to fix it. Meanwhile, let's say it was Bella that was causing this problem. Let's say it was just Bella. It had nothing to do with her father. He can't control Bella. Multiple times we've seen that despite his best foot forward, despite however rude or polite he is with her, Bella will not let go. And so he can't contain the rumors. What is he going to do about it? What is fighting Cormac actually going to do about it? Especially when Bella knows that there's really no consequences for her. Cormac's going to get the shit kicked out of him, and so what? She doesn't even have to deal with it. I'm not saying that, of course, like Johnny should hit Bella. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying that there's not really a consequence that has really come across her path yet. So, how is he going to fix this for her? You know, he's made this promise to fix this thing for Shannon, and he can't, because if it was simply just Bella, this is just proof that he can't fix it. This is not his problem to fix. By this point in the book, Johnny has had multiple conversations with Bella about the status of their relationship and her threats to Shannon. If anything, Johnny intervening actually escalates Bella's desire for harm and drama. She's feeding off the drama. I think what makes this moment even more profound is the way that Shannon approaches Johnny's autonomy later on. So when Johnny is making decisions about his own body and his risks that he's going to take in playing rugby, she explicitly tells him that she doesn't want him to play, that she doesn't want him to risk his body, but that she may not agree with his choices, but she respects that they're his choices to make. And the distinction really matters here because it highlights how deeply Shannon understands what it feels like to have your agency consistently overridden. She also promises to keep his secret fully and without hesitation, which reinforces the respect for his autonomy. Like, she's not going to go tattle on him because he's unwell, even though she feels immensely guilty about this later on. And she says to Gibbs, like, this is my fault because I knew. And he's like, well, then it's my fault too because I also knew. You know, but at the end of the day, these are two people who respect Johnny and want to give him the opportunity to get to this conclusion on his own. Obviously, by that point, he's been backed into a corner. But the entire scene in the cafeteria with Bella is that tension between intention and impact, between protection and control, and what it looks like when someone like Shannon, who has been conditioned to stay small, is suddenly forced into the center of a very public conflict that she'd never consented to, or truthfully to be in the public eye in general because of this developing relationship that she has with Johnny. So this is like really shaking something up in her because this is not what she wants. She's like, I've fallen for the worst person because it would be nice if like Johnny wasn't the star of the fucking show all of the time, you know? So she doesn't explicitly say that. She never really says that in her dialogue either. But she mentions multiple times throughout the course of the book that she's uncomfortable with everyone giving her all of this attention because of her close proximity, you know, her 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon to Johnny. All right, so then let's go to the next sort of like big thing that happens, which is the bus ride to Dublin. So there's a lot that's actually shifting in the dynamic of their relationship over this course of the book, which I think everyone can understand and know, but this is especially happening, I think, for Shannon. Because for the first time, we start to see her even slightly entertain the idea that she deserves care without having to earn it through suffering. And I want to be clear, this isn't a full transformation that she has by the end of this book, as we're approaching the end of this book. She's not suddenly healed, but there's a crack in the foundation that wasn't there in the beginning. A Johnny-sized chasm that is starting to spread and widen the deeper that she gets into this relationship with him. And you really see that right before this experience with the bus, because she asks Claire for help in covering up the bruise on her face. And yes, there is an instinct that she is struggling with where she feels like she's being a burden, or it's unfair to put Claire in this position when she doesn't really give Claire an opportunity to talk about it or even really feel emotional about it. She's like, please don't cry. I can't handle that right now. But the difference is that now she actually does ask for help, and that she has somebody to go to ask for help, even if it's in this small way where Claire is helping her cover it up. At least she has somebody to ask, where she definitely didn't have that at BCS. And Claire shows up for her without hesitation or conditions. And that's the type of friend that Shannon needs right now. And it matters. It matters a lot. Shannon's had nobody since she was 4 years old. So she had Lizzie and she had Claire for a period of time, and then they left and went to Tommen, and she really had no way of staying in touch with them. Not to the same capacity that she has now when she's in Tommen with them. She was never safe. Never felt safe, whether she was at home or at school or out in the community. And this friendship that she has with Claire allows her to have a shift. You know, the safety of the placement that she has experienced at Tommen is allowing her to have this shift for a successful 3-hour emotional detour with Johnny Kavanagh. But at the same time, we're still seeing Shannon test her voice in real time, because when Johnny dismisses her on the bus, she snaps. And rightfully so. She calls that pattern out. She's like, I said no. You did this to me in your car, and you're doing it again now. That's a pattern. I don't like these kinds of patterns, so no. And it's like, yes, Shannon. Yes, Shannon, that's growth, baby. That is awareness. That is self-advocacy. That is boundaries. This is not just her reacting, but naming the behavior and refusing to accept it from Johnny, especially if their relationship is going to continue to develop. And then, of course, like layered on top of all of this is Johnny, who is, like, quite frankly, unraveling a little bit. So if we go back to the beginning of this stretch of chapters, it's chapter 51. Johnny misses practice again to spend time with Shannon, and he's fully aware of what he's doing in that moment. He literally acknowledges in his own internal dialogue that he is playing fast and loose with his future, that the more that he gives into this relationship that he's building with Shannon, his feelings for her, the less central that rugby becomes in his life. And this is coming from a man who does not do anything halfway. In chapter 53, he says, I had to be really fucking careful with my choices, because once I made a decision, once I set my mind on something, or worse, my heart, it was in my nature to follow through with an obsessive hunger. No going back, no second guessing, no changing my mind. I didn't connect with people for the sheer sake of it. And never girls. I needed to be really fucking careful with my next move, because once I decided that she was the girl for me, that would be that. Once I committed myself, once my heart laid claim on her, I might as well slap a label on my forehead stating, I'm yours. Please be gentle with me, because I'm here to stay. He's already there. He's already fallen. He's already 10 toes down for Shannon. So Shannon is becoming something that is both a stabilizing and destabilizing force for him. She offers him the space to actually be vulnerable, especially in the wake of his injury, since he has not really opened up to anybody about the extent of his injury. But she also disrupts the one thing that has always been central to his identity, rugby. And the same goes for Shannon. Johnny provides Shannon with a feeling of groundedness and safety, yet he completely disrupts all the systems that she has in place for keeping herself safe. And from Shannon's perspective, that disruption is actually really terrifying, because in chapter 54, she talks about how for the first time at Tommen, she's had this beautiful cloak of invisibility. She actually says, for the first time in my academic life, I had been given a beautiful cloak of invisibility at Tommen. Johnny Kavanagh threatened to take that from me, and I wasn't brave enough to let him. Johnny's the threat to the thing that she holds most dear, which is her safety, this invisibility cloak that she has, where she can just fly under the radar and keep herself safe, and have this time at Tommen where she is physically safe and protected before going home to the shitstorm that is her family. And Johnny being so in demand and so popular threatens that for her. You know, Johnny's like the opposite of invisible. He's like hyper visible. So by attaching herself to him, she's being pulled directly into his orbit, into his spotlight, in a way that doesn't feel safe for her, particularly with this whole situation with Bella. And she knows that. She literally recognizes that he threatens to take it away from her. So this is this, you know, reciprocity of this stabilization and destabilization that they are offering each other as they fall deeper and deeper in love with each other. And the idea that concept plays out tenfold on the bus, especially when Johnny is starting to clock just how much power that Shannon has over him. He admits that he's afraid of it, which is actually like this really rare moment of self awareness in the actual present moment for him. Johnny loves to self reflect after the fact and withhold his feelings from Shannon in a particular moment in time. Pick the moment, right? He likes to hold things back and then reflect on it after. But this is the first time that they really cross that bridge in an emotionally gratifying way. He says to her, "What I told you that night," he whispered gently, clutching the side of my neck with his huge hand. "All that shit about my surgery and how much pain I'm in. I'm furious with myself for losing my head and telling you something that can be used against me. I gave you power over me and now I'm fucking panicking, okay? I lost my cool with you in the car because you struck a nerve, because you called me out of my bullshit, because you were right." He goes on to say, "I'm not thick. I know what I'm risking by playing, but I have everything riding on the next 15 months, on my body holding out. It's my career. It's my future, and I can't bear to watch it slip through my fingers. I've worked too hard to get to this position to let it all go. They're making me take a test, Shannon. I haven't told anyone about it. And if I don't pass it, if they find out I'm not 100%, they'll pull me and I'll be out for months. Shannon, months. It mightn't seem like a big deal for you, but to me, it's my life. I'll miss my shot with the U20s in June. I'll miss everything. I'll lose everything. That can't fucking happen." And you knowing all of this, me telling you, knowing that it could be held over me, I don't do that, Shannon. I don't ever make myself vulnerable to anyone. Ever. And it scares the shit out of me that I've handed that kind of power over to you. I mean, this is the most vulnerable that he's been. And then he kind of ends that whole monologue that he has by telling her, "I don't know what's happening between us." And this is the most honest that he's ever been. Like, he's acknowledging that there is something that's happening here when he's denied it and denied it again. She's been feeling like she's rejected and put in the friend zone. And Shannon reciprocates all of this information by doing something that on the surface like feels confusing to Johnny, but makes perfect sense when you understand that she's trying to level with him. She tells him about her bullying. She frames it almost like ammunition, like she's giving him something to use against her if he wants to. Shannon realizes that in Johnny's world, this is how his vulnerability works. You don't share something personal expecting care. If you're somebody like Johnny, you share it expecting it to be weaponized because you know that you are on the path of celebrity. Johnny has told her as much when he was yapping about his injury the first time. He literally was like, "Don't gossip about me. You know how these girls be gossiping, okay?" And she was like, "I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I'm not going to tell anybody about this." So the irony is that Johnny is confused, that Shannon is responding this way. He literally says, "I don't get it. I mean, I'm glad that you told me. I'm fucking honored. But you telling me something extremely personal like that with the expectation that I would use it against you and feel good about it, the fact that you were okay with that you thought that I'd be okay with that, that's the part I don't understand." Meanwhile, she's holding a mirror up to him. She's like, "Well, is that what you think about me? Because you just told me a bunch of personal stuff about you and you think that I'm going to weaponize it against you. So what are you doing right now?" It's like the pot calling the kettle black, which she says in this part of the book too, while they're on the bus. She says pot kettle, like, hello. So she's not afraid to point out to Johnny, the differences. And she doesn't do it quite that way right here, but that is what she's doing. She's pointing out like, well, you obviously think that your fears are going to be weaponized against you, so I'm just giving you my fears back so that you could weaponize them back, I guess. Like, in the event that I say something, which, like, I'm not going to, so it doesn't matter that I'm telling you that I was bullied anyway. It all results in the note. "Shannon, like the river, will you please be my friend?" Actually, the note comes beforehand, but we'll wrap up this section of the bus ride with "Shannon, like the river, will you be my friend?" With a P.S. Shannon promises not to sue Johnny when he's signed for the pros for any injuries he may or may not have caused her on the date mentioned above. This is a valid disclaimer. I shit you not. So even then he's putting this disclaimer on it. The check yes or no. Will you please be my friend? This like beautiful blossoming of their relationship. And then I love the way that like Gibbs responds to this, where he's teasing Johnny for the love letter. All of the boys on the team are teasing Johnny about this letter, immediately telling Johnny's like, fuck off. Gibbs is like, I would say the same to you. I would tell you to go fuck yourself, but you've clearly got that sorted. And now, because of these rumors that Bella has spread, everyone around them is like snickering over, over Johnny and Shannon sitting together, having these moments together. But Gibbs is really like clued into Johnny knowing that this is torture, that he's in love and in lust with Shannon. He feels like he can't do anything about it. So he's like, you've already fucked yourself over, bro, by having this whole situation happening with Shannon right now. So let's do also like a little mini tangent on the rules of rugby, because we have to, I fear. I'm sorry. Quick little crash course so we can actually know what's at stake when everyone's freaking out about rugby. We have two main groups that Johnny explains to us. We have forwards and backs. Forwards are the numbers 1 through 8. So 1 is the loose head prop, 2 is the hooker, 3 is the tight head prop, 4 and 5 are both locks, 6 is the blindside flanker, 7 is the open side flanker, which is Gibbsy. That's Gibbsy on the team. And 8 is fittingly number 8. Then you've got the backs, 9 through 15. You've got the scrum half, which is Ronan McGarry. You have 10, which is the fly half, which is Huey Biggs. 11 is the left wing, which is Cormac Ryan. You have 12, which is the outside center, which is Patrick Feely. You have 13 is the outside center, Johnny. 14 is the right wing, which is Pierce O'Neill. And then 15 is the fullback, which is Robbie Mack, who we met briefly in one of the earlier chapters at a party. I'm sure some of these other numbers maybe have been mentioned throughout the book. I didn't put them down. Sorry. But those are the main characters that we've been dealing with for the most part. Another little mini tangent is the Songs for Shannon playlist. This is the little playlist moment that we get in chapter 59. And it's just emotional warfare at best, in my opinion. So I'm going to read out the playlist. Coldplay's Yellow, Guns N' Roses' Sweet Child of Mine, Goo Goo Dolls' Iris, The Furies' When You Were Sweet 16, Howie Day, Collide, The Offspring, Want You Bad, Busted, Fall at Your Feet, Aerosmith's Crazy, Counting Crows, Colorblind, David Gray, This Year's Love, Bon Jovi, In These Arms, Westlife, World of Our Own, Eagle Eye Cherries, Save Tonight, Metallica, Tuesday's Gone, Snow Patrol Run, The Verve, Lucky Man, Him, Wicked Game, and The Laws, There She Goes. And I think Shannon summarizes this perfectly. They were love songs. These were all love songs. The songs become this kind of like indirect communication, a way of Johnny expressing things that he can't articulate yet. This is why he tries to give her a CD, and he gives her the wrong CD, but he wants to give her a CD where the song is She Will Be Loved by Maroon 5. So it's Johnny's way of like expressing the things that he can't quite get out yet. It's intimate without being direct, especially since Shannon sees this particular playlist by accident. I will be linking the playlist in the show notes because this is required listening for your full experience of this book. Chloe Walsh is incredible with the playlist that she puts out, so you should go follow her on whatever platform. Okay, and then let's talk about sort of the third act of this stretch of chapters, which is Johnny's injury and the aftermath. So it all starts on the pitch, but really, technically, it starts way before that, because Johnny collapsing in this moment is the inevitable consequence of everything that he has been ignoring and pushing off all book. So when he passes out at the end of the game, it's not a physical failure, even though it's his body sort of going through this major experience, but it's an emotional, climax that is finally forcing him to confront what he's been refusing to deal with the entire book. And the first person to really say that out loud is Gibbs in the locker room. Johnny's sitting in the locker room like, la, 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 can't hear you, not gonna listen to you, kind of like trying to ignore Gibbs. And Gibbs gets viscerally angry. Like, we've seen him get maybe a little frustrated or usually a little sensitive, but never like elevated in anger, not something that would even be close to comparable to Johnny. And yet he says here, like, that, pointing to the injury, should have healed weeks ago. It's March, Johnny. Fucking March, and you're walking around with your leg half open. He's furious at this point with him. And it's not empty anger either. It's not driven from the same place that Johnny tends to experience his anger, which is like a lot of repressed emotions, because Gibbs is not somebody who I would say emotionally represses, but it's protective. It's this anger that is grounded in love when you're watching somebody you love make a bad decision that you know is a bad decision. Part of the life journey is learning how to be a pillar of support without taking away somebody's ability to learn or grow from an experience. And that's a really hard thing to do. And these are two teenage boys, okay? So he's basically like, you need to stop. You're killing yourself. We will figure it out. And I love the we matters so much. I will say it every fucking time. I don't care if you guys get sick of it. We is important because Gibbsy always frames them as a unit. And it's never just Johnny alone in a problem in that regard. It is a shared problem. It is something that is deeply supported because Gibbs is saying, we will figure this out together. You are supported in whatever comes next. It is a model of male friendship that is actually really healthy and I think emotionally literate. And then things escalate fast because Johnny has to go in for immediate surgery. There's no more pretending that this isn't a serious issue. His parents have been called. He's got to get into an ambulance, and it's happening tonight. And his other coaches from the academy and from the club are going to find out. So, Gibbs gets him settled. He's giving him some space. He walks outside. He sees Shannon pacing in front of the locker room, like waiting to get any whiff of what is happening with Johnny. She's so afraid. She was afraid that he died on the pitch. And so she asks Gibbs, like, how is he? And I love this exchange between the two of them. Gibbs says he's in a bad way, he admitted quietly. Depending on what the doctors say when he gets to the hospital, he's looking at some serious time out of the game. Exhaling heavily, he ran a hand through his hair. He's out for the final for sure. And this is how Shannon replies. I don't want to know if he can play rugby or not, I squeezed out as a wave of guilt swallowed me up. I want to know if he is okay. Him, Johnny, the person, not the fucking rugby player. Right? And for Shannon, who doesn't really curse, is very low key, this makes an impression on Gibbs, who's so used to girls also approaching him and asking about Johnny's status, I'm sure, because Gibbs is in his orbit. Shannon's response is genuine. She really doesn't care about the rugby. She cares about the rugby for the sake of Johnny and the fact that this is something that Johnny cares about. But for her personally, she doesn't care. She says it later on when he's in the hospital. She's like, if you never pick up another rugby ball again, I don't care. I will still have feelings for you. And that's a comfort for him in that moment, even though he's very, very high when she says that. What's nice here is that Gibbs get to witness this after the big fat mess that was Bella, because Shannon prioritizing the person, Johnny, over the system, rugby, over the performance, over the thing that defines him, is something that's very winning and endearing, especially to somebody like Gibbs, eventually to Johnny's parents, who will witness this behavior in this stretch of chapters, and to Johnny himself. This is what she needs to continue to convince Johnny of. So Shannon goes into the locker room, and what I love here is the callback to Shannon's first day, where Johnny is the one sitting with her in Toomey's office after knocking her out with the ball, trying to keep her awake. And so he's asking her about her scars, to keep her engaged in a conversation. And now we get this inversion of that at the very end of the book, where Shannon is the one that is asking him about his scars, trying to keep him distracted while they're waiting for the ambulance. And then in the middle of all of this chaos, they have their first real kiss in the locker room, which should be something that maybe is soft or romantic, but instead is this sort of heated, bloody, hurtful, painful experience for Johnny in particular, is immediately interrupted by Mulcahy, who hits Shannon with, is that the kind of reputation that you want starting off at Tommen, Miss Lynch? Do you want to be one of those girls? Which immediately gives me the ick, because the misogyny here is very, very loud. Okay, Mr. Mulcahy. Johnny is the one who has a professional rugby career ahead of him. Mulcahy is his coach, yet somehow Shannon is the one whose reputation is on the line. She immediately is sexualized, judged, categorized, while Johnny just sits there, untouched by the same scrutiny. It is such a clear example of how quickly girls are policed for behavior that boys are also participating in, and in fact that they are allowed to exist within those structures freely, while women are criticized and judged. So after the surgery, Shannon makes the choice to go to the hospital with Gibbsy, even though Claire warns her about her father. And she's like, I really don't think that you should do this. But Shannon knows the risk. She's already stayed overnight in Dublin. The school is already called home because she's been seen with Johnny. So in her mind, the damage is done. She already considers herself a dead girl walking. There's something almost defiant in the decision that she makes to go with Gibbs. Like, if I'm going to get in trouble, I might as well do the thing that matters to me, which I love for Shannon as she slowly starts to break out of this like good girl conditioning that has been placed upon her. And what matters to her right now is Johnny and knowing that Johnny is safe and okay. She gets to the hospital. There's this wonderful line where she says, I needed to see that boy again more than I needed to be afraid, which I think is a really good, mission statement for where Shannon is going, where her trajectory, her arc is going in the next book in Keeping 13. Because for Shannon, fear has been the governing force of her life. And this is the one time where she actively chooses something over that internal fear that she has, even if it's just, what Johnny's parents will think of me. When she's at the hospital, we get this almost surreal mix of tenderness and chaos that happens between the two of them. Johnny is very high, very disoriented, and Shannon is the only one who can get him to settle down. It is also the first time that he tells her that he loves her. He demands that she say it back. He demands that she kiss him. He insists that she'll have his children and demands that she says so. And he once again presses her about her bruises, and she finally breaks down and tells him that it's her dad. But when he wakes up and he is more fully responsive, the first thing that takes over is fear and anxiety, and he pulls back. He completely dismisses her and once again says something so incredibly ironic, considering that Johnny is somebody who consistently tells Shannon, I can fix this problem for you. And now here Shannon is staying with him, trying to help him, not fix it. She's not trying to fix it, but she is trying to help him through this problem that he is having. And what he says is, she couldn't fix this for me. And I was terrified of losing more than I already had. I knew she was fragile, and I didn't want to scare her away. If she stayed in this room, that's exactly what I was going to end up doing. If I did that, if she saw the ugly side of me, the weakness in me, I would lose her too. Meanwhile, the thing that's pushing her away is the fact that he is cycling the drain with this pattern that he has where he pulls her in, creates this intense closeness with her. And then the second that it requires him to actually sit in that vulnerability, he retreats and he creates distance. And that push-pull dynamic that defines so much of their relationship at this point is the thing that is actually keeping Shannon at bay. At the same time, we're watching Johnny in a completely different type of state, perhaps the most vulnerable that he's been. And we get to witness the depth of this vulnerability with the dynamic between him and his father. So first and foremost, I stan John Kavanaugh Sr. This is what healthy, stable patriarch looks like. His dad is his anchor, his safe place. It's the person that he can fall apart in front of. He finally let goes and cries. He's comforted by him. And then he's held in the experience of this fear that he has of everything falling apart, even his relationship with Shannon. He wants so badly to spiral and be like, Shannon left and she doesn't care about me because I don't have rugby anymore and I'm worthless. And John Sr. doesn't let him do that. He doesn't let him lose the fire that he has for this game either. He doesn't let him see that there's no way out of this. He's like, you can course correct. There's a way out of this, buddy. You don't need to go down the worst case scenario. Even if you did have the worst case scenario, he says the most beautiful things about him. John Sr. says, if you do not make it this summer, then you do not make it this summer. You are still Johnny Kavanaugh. You are still an honor student. You are still a good man. And you are still my best decision. Say you don't make it in June. It's devastating. Your mother and I understand. You might not think that we do, but we brought you into this world, and every single painful moment in your life that you endure and every obstacle you stumble over, we're there, Johnny. We're right behind you, feeling everything. Your pain, your frustration, your fears. It's all mirrored back to us. Your achievements are ours, and your heartache is ours. Because you are all we have, Johnny. Just you. That's it. When you're older and you have children of your own, a son of your own, you'll understand what I mean. But for now, you're going to have to take my word for it. He goes on to like essentially give him the tough love that he needs, which is like, you fucked around and you found out, baby. And so Johnny apologizes, and John Sr., patriarch and Julia's number one stan. Okay, I love him so much. He's not my number one stan. I'm his number one stan. Let's get that straight. He says, I don't need an apology, without a hint of anger in his tone. I need you to understand, to take a step back from this dream you've been chasing and realize that your life is already happening. I just want it so bad, Dad, I confess. So fucking bad. And John Sr. says, I want it for you. I want you to chase your dreams, Johnny. I want you to make them come true. I want every single thing you want from life to happen for you, but I need you to do all that with a steady head. Even the best fall down sometimes, son. What you do next, with clear, calculated, logical thought, is what will define you. He continues to deliver him some hard truth, and then he wraps up this entire conversation that he has with Johnny with the most beautiful line, I think, of all, which is, the truth is always better than a lie. More painful, but much more beneficial in the long run. He's like, I'm not bullshitting you. This is the truth. Here it is. Here's everything. I'm laying it out for you. Nice and direct and clear. And this is what you can do with that information. And that leaves Johnny with this internal sense of, I could pull back from the edge. I could do it. My dad thought I could do it. Like, if he thinks I can get back and be in the U20s by this year, then like I can do it. Because if he thinks so, why not? And this entire conversation that Johnny and John Sr. have highlights so starkly what Shannon doesn't have at all. What Shannon is about to walk into is the completely opposite vibes. You know, she doesn't have nurturing, loving parents. It's not even like, oh, she has a nurturing, loving mom and just a bad relationship with her dad. Like, she doesn't have either. So the aftermath for Shannon is sort of this clash collision for Shannon with the reality that she knew was on the horizon. Her father assaults her so violently when she gets home that she recognizes in real time that she might be dying. And even in that moment, her mind goes to Johnny. She's imagining him, hearing him, and holding on to this idea that he loves her as a way to survive the pain of this experience that she's going through. And that is so devastating because it's literally love becoming this lifeline for her. It is highlighting how extreme her circumstances are, especially compared to the scene that we just had with John Sr. And there's also this parallel of like Joey stepping in and Shannon having to use the promises as a manipulation tactic, but instead of using it as a coping mechanism and holding Joey to something that's going to make her feel better in a particular moment, she uses it in this moment as emotional leverage to stop him from killing Teddy, to stop him from crossing a line that he cannot come back from, because Joey is her hero. Joey is the person that she admires the most. But there's also that moment where Joey has to point out to Marie that Shannon is bleeding because Marie is so focused on Teddy. Like, Teddy just kicked the ever-loving shit out of Shannon. She thinks she's dying. She's taken blows for Tig in this stretch, and that detail is really important to me because even though I would say that Shannon is not somebody who is a protector, she takes this role of protecting Tig, Ollie, and Sean very, very seriously, to the point where she gets an even worse beating just trying to keep Tig out of harm's way. And listen, this is critical to me as we go through Keeping 13, which we'll talk about at the end of this episode. Tig is one of my favorite characters. We'll get to spend some more time with him next book. Tig is one of my favorite characters. I love him so much. He's so precious to me. So I love that she protects him here because I love him. I love him so, so much. He might be my favorite Lynch. I'm just kidding. 100% Joey. But Tig is like second. Sorry, Shannon. She comes in number 3. But yeah, I think this experience of Marie being so focused on Teddy is what snaps shit for Joey. Shannon's literally fading in front of her, and she's still not the priority. So Joey in that moment becomes the one who sees her, who intervenes, who acts on her behalf. And all of this sits in literally direct contrast with what we have just seen with Johnny, because Shannon is moving through 2 completely different worlds with Johnny and with her home life. You know, with Johnny, she has one where love looks like care, support, safety, even if it's imperfect and it's shaky and it's finding its footing. And then she has one where this idea of love is tangled up in violence and neglect and survival. And that's what makes the end of this book so brutal, is that both of these realities can exist for her at the same time, and how those 2 different experiences are going to play out as their story continues, right? And what that will mean for Johnny as well. All right, guys, I think we did it. Let's crack open our burn book, where we will look at the superlatives for this episode. So we have the Bold and Bothered Award, the award that is strictly for the femme and the furious. It is the quote or the moment that relays the most feminine rage, and it is Lizzie standing up and demanding that Johnny act on Shannon's behalf when the rumors break out at school. The Shiro Award. This award goes to the baddie who is the most inspiring, or the moment that is the most empowering. And this goes to Shannon, okay? Shannon protecting Tig, even though he doesn't leave. Shannon insists that Tig goes upstairs with the other boys to prevent him from getting hurt in the wake of her father's rage, their father's rage. And I love that even though we know that she is this tiny little, you know, toothpick of a girl, that she goes out of her way to prevent him from getting hurt and takes the blows for him, and how emotionally strong she is for doing that, and how much that is a testament of her love. The Femme Fatale Award, you know, for the most smash the patriarchy moment of the episode. Normally I find that I have to give this to a woman. I think this might be the very first time that I'm giving it to a man, but hear me out. Okay, I'm giving it to John Kavanaugh Sr. for being the best dad. Speak your truth trophy. Best quote or line. The first one, I have a few. Determination flows through that boy's vein just as potently as terror flows through mine. Chilling when I read that. That's from Shannon. This is from Johnny, where he says, if feelings were objects, then I was teetering on the edge of a great precipice, and if girls were weapons, then Shannon Lynch was the greatest weapon of mass destruction my heart has ever been exposed to. And then a very silly one, but I love this line where Gibbs says to Johnny, you almost decapitated yourself. Decapitated, in case I didn't say that clear enough for people to get it, even though you would have read it, hopefully, if you're listening to this episode and you made it to this point of the episode. Honorary heartthrob, because I'm just a girl, okay, and I want to talk about the most swoon-worthy moments of the book. I have a few. Okay, this is from chapter 60. I was starving for her and everything she was, every part of her inside and out. I wanted to fight all her battles. I wanted to give her all her smiles and make her laugh and snatch her away from the rest of the world and keep her all to myself. I just wanted her for keeps. I knew that was incredibly selfish of me, and I knew I was probably going to end up fucking up everything and breaking her heart. But the problem was my heart was involved too. I needed to talk to her tonight because I needed to lay it all out there. I couldn't go another day without getting it off my chest. Months of wanting, lusting, and pining after her had left me to the point where I couldn't see straight anymore because I had caught feelings for Shannon. Huge fucking feelings, permanent ones. I knew I was too old for her. I knew she was too sweet and pure to be dragged into the limelight that came with my life. And I knew she was too fucking broken for a guy like me to get tangled up with. But I already felt like I was drowning in her. That's how consumed I was in this girl. That's how much I loved her. Okay, Johnny. I love the part 2 where he's talking to his parents and he's like, I think I love that girl. And I think it's his mom is like, who's the girl? And he's like, she's the river, you know, because he calls her Shannon like the river. And of course we know who he's talking about. His parents are like, what the fuck is he talking about? This guy is high as fuck. And then of course, boom, boom, fucking boom. This is the quote of the book. Like if you type in Binding 13, you are going to see boom, boom, fucking boom merch and stickers and things like that, because that's the quote, babies. That's the quote of the book. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Femme and Furious. If you like this episode, share it out, rate it, give it a review. Starting next Tuesday, we will be covering Euphoria. I am going to continue with Keeping 13 at some point. I will give you an update on that next week when we start in Euphoria Land. I don't know where I'm going to fit it into the schedule. But I am looking at like the schedule in the next month or 2 months and figuring out where we can put Keeping 13, because these two stories, Finding 13 and Keeping 13, they roll right into each other, one after the next. So we'll pick up there at some point. I'm just not 100% sure yet, so I don't want to make a commitment that I can't follow through on. I will be back here on Friday, and until then, bye, Johnny.